Welcome everyone to Tales from the 90s, your retro time machine back to my favorite time period, the 90s, obviously. Obviously. And we're on episode number 43. Man, almost a year's worth of episodes. I maybe 2 or 3 weeks off, but normally it's been every single Wednesday. I know the times are always different when they come out, but, nobody ever watches stuff when it first comes out anyway. It's, you might watch this a year from when it was put out. By the way, it's being recorded in August, which, by the way, it's like 60-something degrees. This has been like, this last week's been like the best I ever remember August being. But anyway, we're going back to March of 1997. It's my 6th trip back into 1997. We pick a random month and year from the 90s. So I don't think I've ever done 2 months in the same year back to back. It may happen if it comes up randomly, but not on purpose. But anyway, at this time I was 13 years old. And it's the last few months of my first year of 7th grade. I've told many times before about how I failed 7th grade. But on my last few months of 7th grade here, and obviously knew I was failing, but with stuff going on at home and just me being a stupid teenager, I didn't really care. But we'll get into more of that maybe on another episode or something. But do want to quickly, not take forever like I normally do, go. If you've been watching my top 40 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, special bonus episode that I've split into 4 parts. Parts 1 and 2 are out now. Part 3 will be out Friday, so 2 days from when this premieres. And again, that's a 4-part series. Obviously 10 in each one. I include the intros and outros to the Crypt Keeper because that's everybody's favorite parts. So far, they haven't gotten blocked. I've gotten a copyright thing, but not like it's going to be blocked or anything. For now. You know how that goes. The next bonus episode that'll be coming out after these wrap up will be... I'm sorry the air conditioner pops on and off. I know it's like 69 out, but still, if the air's not on, it gets a little stifling. But anyway, the next actual bonus episode that's not Tales from the Crypt will be out September 19th. That's a Friday. It's bonus episode number 12. It's back to school. Because back when I was in school, we went to school in September, not August. And everybody's been in school now probably 2 or 3 weeks by now. But just memories of different schools that I've been to, going into the schools, just the whole back to school thing, go give you my experience. Maybe if there's like some teenager or something watching now, it's probably completely different. Obviously, we didn't have the technology you guys have now with the freaking computers and stuff. That would have been awesome. I mean, each classroom didn't even have a computer in elementary school. By the time we got to middle school, I think each one had like 1 or 2 computers, but nothing like you have today. So it'd be kind of cool to go the differences, like, to see maybe some comments of the, how your school uses technology. But I mean, how you view your school using technology if you're a teenager today is probably like, you probably don't even think about it just all the ways. I mean, teacher has a computer. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure a lot of the tests are probably done on computer. There's probably more done on computers than actual books, from what I'm guessing. But I mean, like I said, on that one, I'm just going to give my experiences back in the 90s of when I was in school. Kind of what it's like going through, because I moved around schools a few times too. It wasn't just like, and that's another thing. If you've only been like in one school through your whole life and been with the same group of people, you'll have a completely different experience than me. Like I said, multiple schools, multiple cities, and when I failed 7th grade, obviously I was a whole another class of people. And I don't mean that like a lower class. I just mean like, literally class. I was with the grade behind me because I was in that grade now because I'm an idiot. Anyway, that's for the future. We're going back right now, like I said, to March 1997. talk a little bit about TV. This was around the time I started really getting into Boy Meets World, because it was during March of 1997 that they entered syndication. Now, if, I don't know if, like I said, Tail, stop. It's my dog. Like I said, mostly people that probably watch this are from my time period, but if you're, for some reason, younger watching this, I kind of want to appeal to everybody. So, if you don't know what syndication is, I mean, if I say streaming, you're like, oh, blah, 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 you know that, but syndication, on TV, you have a network you usually premiere on, unless you're just one of those shows that's like put out to like can go on any station. But like your network, like ABC, Fox, CBS, NBC, that type of stuff. Usually, if you start on one of those, you're on that channel, and your reruns will only be on that channel. But what syndication is when a show gets permission from the network. Usually, when it's been on for a while. Then they sell the rights to like any channel. It can be another cable channel, local channels in different towns. It can be on different networks. Anyway, if you know what I'm talking about. Sorry for rambling on about it. But Boy Meets World entered syndication at this time. It was they were in their 4th season. I'm trying to think of the time. Well, I'll talk a little bit about that season a little bit later when we go into our TGIF lineup, which I like to do. That'll be probably last in the video, I think, today. But I just remember, it was just like such great memories. Like I said, I was in 7th grade. I'd come home from school. And I'm trying to be an old man here, but I walked a mile uphill both ways. Literally, I did. It was almost a mile to school. And there was this part of this hill where there's you're going up a hill and then down a hill and then up a hill and down a hill. And you do that, obviously, both ways. So literally, I walked a mile to school uphill both ways. I'm officially an old person. And yes, in the snow, because in our city, when I was going to school, middle school in Norwood, they didn't have a bus system because everything was so close. And so school didn't get canceled a whole lot because of transportation issues, because kids were usually in walking distance, even though the walking distance was, like I said, a mile. But anyway, like I said, I would walk home from school. I'm not sure when my brothers got home. The ones when Josh and Travis were in school. I think Travis was in school this time. Let's see. Yeah, he would have started kindergarten. If he didn't, it was the next year. Anyway, they went to elementary school, so they were a lot closer, and they had a different dismissal time. But anyway, regardless of who got home first. By the way, I have 3 brothers. This time, one of them was a baby, and I have 5 sisters, 3 from my dad who are older than me, which I didn't actually grow up with, other than them being over at my dad's. I didn't, if I did live with them, it was when I was so young. I don't have like memories of it. But my 2 younger sisters were born in the 2000s, so don't talk about them too much. I will in the future. It's not like ignoring them. It's just like if I'm going to the 90s, it's I try to stay in there. You know me, sometimes I get rambling, like now. But anyway, I'm making a long story out of this. Anyway, I get home from school. This is my routine. I just get a bowl of cereal and sit down and watch Boy Meets World. Like I said, I'd seen it a few times on TGIF, but I really got into it during syndication, where I could watch a couple episodes every day after school. And it was just like awesome because these kids were like maybe a grade ahead of me, I think is what it was. So it was like, I could identify with them. You don't get that a whole lot with, some shows. Like with Saved by the Bell, they were already teenagers in high school. I liked the show, but I didn't really identify with it as much. But, all the stuff that was going on with Boy Meets World, having crushes, the kids getting into trouble, fighting with your siblings, fighting with your teacher and your parents, Obviously, we weren't like, class-wise, I guess, and I mean this by like, lower, upper, middle class, their family was, well off than ours, so it wasn't like I was like, we weren't lower class. I think, I don't know, we were like low to middle class if you had to like classify it, and they were more like middle class. I don't think they were upper class on Boy Meets World. They just lived in a house, and they had regular problems, but you could identify with that type of stuff as a kid, especially the school part, which they focused on a lot. It was just like, watching, almost parallel versions, and sometimes you were like wish that you were the character. Like everybody wanted to be Corey so they could be going out with Topanga, obviously. But it's strange watching from the beginning, because later on they would say like, oh, Corey and Topanga were always together since they were on like the swing set in kindergarten. But when you watch the first season, they like couldn't stand each other, and like I think it was either 5th or 6th grade. I think it was 6th grade, and it was like they obviously went back. They do that a lot on the show, and if they have a podcast, I think it's called Pod Meets World. I haven't been keeping up with it as much as I wanted to, just because a million things to do and a million things going on. But they talk about all the different times where they've went back and kind of rewrote history. Like Topanga's had different parents on there, and her parents have been different names, and Sean's had different family members. It's just it don't really, none of it really matters. It's just it was a great way to I get home from all the stress of school. Get home and relax before the stress of the home life really starts up, which I've talked about that a million times. I don't need to keep going on and on. I'll go a little bit into it later on. But, it was like my time. I don't think my brothers were there for some reason. Like, I'm sure they were, but I just don't remember watching it with them, unless maybe I was just so engrossed in the show I didn't even, because I was like focused on it. And as a kid, that's kind of like, you normally don't, you're all over the place. Kids don't just normally sit still. But I remember whenever I watched TV like that or Nickelodeon, I would just sit still, be like transfixed on it. But sorry for taking a million years on this. Million years on one sentence that says, entering syndication this year after 4 seasons, Boy Meets World. And then I go off on my tangent. If I did the whole thing on everything, I'd be here all day. But we'll get into music now. I like to give the number ones for the pop charts, which I was not listening to at the time, and the country charts, which I was obsessed with. But the Hot 100, the Billboard Hot 100, remember that Hot 100? That'll come into play later. The number one song for 3 weeks, plus 1 week back in February, giving them 4 weeks total, was the Spice Girls' Wannabe. That was probably their biggest hit. And of course, this was like, they like became like super popular. Even me that didn't listen to their music, like, knew who they were. And of course, they came out with that Spice World movie. My wife's a big fan of them. Just like, they like took the world by storm for like a couple of years. It didn't last long, but it was like, you know how sometimes pop careers are. They just go, and then most of the time they go. Sometimes they stay up there. But the next song, it was number one for 2 weeks and all of April for 6 weeks total. Yay! Was "Can't Nobody Hold Me Down" by P. Diddy featuring Mace. Well, first of all, he needs to be maced, and second of all, apparently nobody can hold. Pays off juries. That's all I'm gonna say with that idiot. Everybody knows about that creep. I said creep, and my dog Tiny looked at me. Are you a creep, Tiny? He's still staring at me. He's like, don't talk about P. Diddy at my house. We ain't having no parties with no baby oil. Anyway, the countdown I listened to was American Country Countdown. I remember it, listened to it all the time. 9 o'clock in the morning to noon, Sunday mornings with Bob Kingsley. Love that countdown. I would usually record it, but then of course I'd run out of tape, so I had to record over it. There were so many times I had to choose, like, man, I love this song, but I love this new song that's coming out more, so I got to record over it, And of course, if you'd find like some old tape, it'd be like your lucky day. And if you put the tape in and it wouldn't record, if you're from my generation, you know exactly what to do. You cover the little tabs with tape. Same with VHS. That's a little old people's trick that we know, that we thought we were just so like, ooh, I know this trick now, look at me. But anyway, number one for the first week of March was "Running Out of Reasons to Run" by Rick Trevino. Sorry, I said his name wrong. One of those ones that only had a few hits, but that I remember very well. One of my favorite songs from the 90s. Someone who's well known in the 90s was Toby Keith. His song "Me Too" went to number one. That was during his 90s era, Toby Keith, which was, obviously his first run. he became, a superstar later on, but it was during this he was like building up his stuff, and he would do a lot of ballads, and I really loved it. I wish he would have done more in his later career, but great song. Dina Carter went to #1 for 2 weeks in a row with We Danced Anyway, and I just seen her like 3 weeks ago at the Watermelon Festival in Brownstown, which, by the way, Tracy Bird was there too. Yes, the Watermelon Crawl. Got to see it in person at the Watermelon Festival. But yeah, Dina Carter was great in concert. One of those ones that, had a huge first album but didn't have too much success. Had a few minor hits, but nothing like her first album. I thought she was going to be a lot bigger than what she was, but especially the late 90s and the 2000s, stuff started to really change. But the last song that was #1 that month was Reba McEntire's "How Was I to Know." I mean, she was still making #1s, almost at this, 20 years into her career at this point. Still making not just hit songs, but great songs. She wasn't just coasting on her legacy. It was, really good quality songs. But talk a little bit about sports now. Of course, March is that time when, baseball spring training, so that the season hasn't started. I think maybe there'd have been a game started, because sometimes games now start, towards the end of March. But I normally don't talk about baseball until April, just because, we can talk about a couple games. But one thing I will talk about that I never talk about any other time but March is college basketball, or basketball of any kind, because I'm not a fan. Obviously, being from the 90s, we all were fans of Michael Jordan. If we didn't watch basketball, that's how big he was. But like I said, college basketball, March Madness, I always watch for my teams. My teams are, I can't talk. That'll be the first of many times today. Ohio State, of course, my favorite team. Being from Cincinnati, UC, especially during the 90s, was real big. And Xavier University, which isn't as big as UC or Ohio State, but they were actually like right on the edge of Norwood, the town we lived in, so they were like super close. So a lot of Xavier fans around, and I was a fan of them too. Like I said, only during March. But UC won in the first round. They defeated Butler 86-69, but they lost in the round of 32, which is of course the second round. They lost to Iowa State only 67-66, so they only lost by 1. Xavier was also in the tournament. They won the first round too. They defeated Vanderbilt 80-68, but then they lost in the round of 32. They got beat by UCLA 96-83. No Ohio State. Ohio State is mostly known for college football, and for good reason. They're better at that. Just like with UK, you think of basketball when you think of UK instead of football, because they've always had certain colleges are more known for basketball. Like North Carolina, they're more known for basketball than football. Alabama's more known for football than basketball. But the Final Four consisted of Kentucky, Minnesota, Arizona, and North Carolina. State now, all states. Minnesota was later stripped of their Final Four status due to their NCAA violations, which they're always stupid. Like I gave this college gave this person $10 for a sandwich. Literally, I've seen that before. Give them like $10 to get a sandwich because they didn't have money to eat that day, and that's a violation. I mean, the cheating stuff and everything, I get. They should take away titles, take away chances to be in titles, and future games and fines and all that kind of stuff. And nowadays it don't matter because college athletes are getting paid, so it's like maybe they should, for some of this stuff, they should go back and it's okay now. Why wasn't it okay then? It literally wasn't a crime. So anyway, but it's enough of that. The finals, Arizona defeated UK 84-79 in overtime to win their first title. Like I said, I don't talk about college basketball or NBA basketball ever. But during March, like I said, and I don't ever even watch the finals unless my team's in it. Shows how little I care. Like, once my teams are out, I'm done. Of course, I fill out the brackets and everything, and of course, I suck at them. But a little bit of NASCAR news. Wearing my Jeff Gordon hat. Rusty Wallace won the Pontiac Excitement 400 at Richmond, and Dale Jarrett won the Prime Star 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway and the Trans-South 400 at Darlington. But this year was all about Jeff Gordon. He ended up, which As you see, he ended up winning his second championship in November, and just his third year racing. And that's, huge freaking. This is my dad's favorite. That's why he's my favorite. My dad's the reason I got into NASCAR to begin with. But we're going to talk a little about the one movie that came out in theaters this month that I really liked, involving this. Before I even get into that, you can see here I got the new fan of Chucky's Punch. I don't know if you can see that, but Chucky's Punch. I'm keeping a can, obviously, but there's a few other ones. I don't care about the Five Nights at Freddy's, and there's some other one I don't care about. But the one I haven't found yet that I really want is the Michael Myers one, the pineapple one. It says Halloween 2. I don't know specifically why it's Halloween 2 and not just Halloween, but whatever. I'm looking to collect those two. By the way, the Chucky's Punch is good. It's just fruit punch, but it's good. But like I said, the movie. I know last week we were in. What month were we in last week? Sorry, give me just a second here. Last week we were in August of '93, and that's when Power Rangers, the TV show. Obviously in Japan they'd already been out as, I think. Well, there's my siren. Sorry about that. You just heard the stupid siren. It literally goes off every single day at noon. It don't take off on holidays. It don't matter if there's supposed to be thunderstorms and tornadoes that day. It does it at noon no matter what. They test it every day. I think it works. And the funny thing is when actual stuff goes on, they hardly ever use it. It's the most ridiculous thing. And we live right next to the fire station where it goes off, and the dogs go nuts and everything. But anyway, we're going to get back to talking about what I was talking about before that was the movie that just came out. I just talked about how the Power Rangers came out. The last episode I did was their actual debut. The movie, obviously the Power Rangers movie had already come out, but this is the second movie. It's called Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. And it shows the movie version anyway, how they got their turbo powers. Actually, I can't remember. I think the show might follow what the movie does. I know in the Power Rangers TV show, I think how they got their ninja powers is a little different than what they did in the movies. It's weird, but since they go off of that Japanese footage, they got to kind of go with what the footage they have. Obviously they can't put the footage they have with footage from the movie into the TV show because it all looks so different. Like if you've seen the first Power Rangers movie, you'll notice that their outfits are shinier and everything else. But anyway, the Turbo Power Rangers movie was a really good movie. I like the first one better, obviously, but there's always mixed reactions of the kid being the Blue Ranger. I'm okay with it, just because before when you had Billy as the Blue Ranger, before that he became a Power Ranger, he didn't know how to, he was like the prototypical geeky type character, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but the science guy, he didn't know how to fight at all, but all of a sudden he's a Power Ranger, and at first it's like he's kind of like lucking into the things he's doing when he's morphed, but then he starts fighting more. So the kid becoming the Ranger, and then him growing as tall as the other Rangers, it's Power Rangers. If you're trying to sit there and be like, well, a kid couldn't do this, it's Power Rangers, okay? A monster couldn't walk through the city and knock buildings down. And which, by the way, if you watch it every week, they're knocking like 5 or 6 buildings down, and Angel Grove has this high school, and it's like a small looking high school, so it's a smaller town, but yet there's these giant buildings, and they're getting knocked down every week. What are they putting them back up? They must have a hell of a construction company there. Maybe they need to come and take care of some of these roads around here in Indiana. Indiana, the capital of, let's start a road project and we might finish it in 10 years and it'll be worse off. Anyway, trying not to stay in today's times. But anyway, the Turbo Ranger movie was pretty cool. It had Jason and Kimberly return. Of course, they went to their peace conference. I talked about that on a post on Facebook. I don't even think I mentioned in video about some of the things on Power Rangers we just bought as a kid, like how the original was it Jason, Trini, and Zach all left the Power Rangers because they went to this World Peace Conference, and that's why they had to leave. And I'm thinking, not as a kid, because a kid, you're like, oh, that's why they're leaving. Obviously breaking the fourth wall of it, you know that they left the show because, you know, the actors were leaving the show. That's why they had to go to Rocky, Aisha, and, oh, jeez, I'm trying to think of Adam. I couldn't think of his name for a second. You know, that's the actual reasons why. But the show reasons, because they went to some world peace conference, I can't even remember where, overseas. I can't even tell you what continent. I don't know if it was in Europe or Asia. But anyway, now as an adult, I'm thinking, these MFers would go to other planets, other solar systems, other universes and everything, and they could be more, you know, teleported back to the command center or back to Earth in the freaking snap of a finger. But yet these people are going to this peace conference, and you're telling me they can't be zapped there that quick. Especially when you think about if they were over there, the time period is different. So when the Power Rangers would be fighting people around 4 in the afternoon, it seems. Snuggle, stop that. My dog. Again. One of my dogs again. But, you can't tell me that they can't be zapped over there. Especially that time period. They'd probably be asleep in the real world, so that it's not like they would be like, go missing from somewhere. It's just, like I said, I know the actual reason why, but if you think about their explanation as an adult, it's kind of stupid because, anyway, back to the Turbo Rangers movie. Obviously, that's where they got their, you know, they had their Turbo Zords. You know, a lot of people, you know, obviously not the most creative thing. They're cars, but, you know, it's something they hadn't done on Power Rangers where the Zords were cars, so, you know, it's kind of different. But, you know, better later when they had Wild Force and all this stuff and just them driving around on motorcycles was kind of stupid. Keep an eye on my phone. Okay, I know something went off. Anyway, sorry about that. We didn't have phones back then to interrupt our podcast. Or podcast to interrupt. But yeah, like a lot of people didn't like the movie. I think it's okay. Divatox is the main villain in it. It felt like they were trying to come up with another Rita. She just didn't carry it off as well. But I mean, she looked evil. You know, obviously nothing beats the original Rangers and the Lord Zed era of the Thunder Zords. You know, after that, you know, it would progressively, the quality would get lower and lower. Not that I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't until I even enjoyed like the first season of when they went to space. But after that, I just couldn't get into it anymore. And of course, I found out all the stuff that happened later on with like Rita and Zed being turned like back into actual people, and they became good again, and all that stuff. You know, someday I'll catch up on all these. But like I said, I like the Turbo movie. Not as much as the original movie, but it was still fun to watch. We're talking about wrestling now. I got a lot to cover in this. We'll start off with ECW. This is the month before ECW's first ever pay-per-view. So this was like one of their last supercards before pay-per-view started. They would still do these after. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a supercard, it's like a big event that they would have that, you know, was like their pay-per-views. Like I said, this is before their pay-per-view, like a month before, where it wouldn't just be like a normal like event. Well, although with ECW, they did a lot of these like really big events where, you know, like WCW had their pay-per-views and their Clash of the Champions. WWF for a while had the Saturday night's main event, and then they had their pay-per-views, and then, you know, regular TV tapings. You know, ECW normally didn't hold their regular TV tapings. They would have big events like this. Like this one was called the Hostile City Showdown. It was the fourth ever one. It was in the ECW arena, and portions of the show, you know, edited down, they would show over 2 different episodes of their TV show called Hardcore TV, which was on syndication in, like, you know, different markets. Like in ours, there was different time periods, but there was a long time period when it was on at like 1 or 2 in the morning on our local channel 25. You know, so you'd have to go out of your way and stay up late to be able to watch it. But at this show, the Dudley Boys defeated ECW Tag Team Champions, the Eliminators, to win the titles for the very first time. To start one of their legendary runs. The main event was supposed to be a tag team match This is just weird to read the results of this, but it's supposed to be Stevie Richards and Tommy Dreamer versus Raven and a partner that was going to be like drawn from a lottery. They end up drawing Stevie Richards, who was already Tommy Dreamer's partner. And I don't know, like, from reading the thing, whether it was, purposely done that way. Like, I mean, obviously, wrestling was purposely done that way, but you know what I mean. Like, Raven somehow rigged it to get him to be the partner. But anyway, since he couldn't be a partners of both people, ECW commissioner at the time, Todd Gordon, turned it into a three-way dance. And in ECW, a three-way dance is different than the WWE's triple threat matches. Triple threat matches are three people, the first pinfall wins. In three-way dances, it was always elimination, which I always enjoyed that better. Especially playing a video game, I always enjoyed that better. Because with eliminations, the computer person doesn't try to break up your pin, because the match still goes if one person is eliminated. In a triple threat match, it is hard on any video game, especially No Mercy. Oh my God. I can't remember, did No Mercy have triple threat matches? I can't remember. They had tag team matches, and it was hard to win them because the partner would always break them up. But anyway, triple threat matches are always hard to win on video games because, the computer character is going to break it up almost every time unless you find a way to take him out. Anyway, it was turned into a triple threat match for Raven's ECW championship. And Raven first pinned Stevie Richards and then pinned Tommy Dreamer to keep the title. But moving on to the very next night, March 16th, WCW was on pay-per-view uncensored from Charleston, South Carolina. That WCW pay-per-view where everything's uncensored, but yet a lot of the matches had regular rules. That was their thing. Like, they promoted, this is anything goes in this, but it's not anything goes except select matches. Anyway, this is the third one of those. Dean Malenko defeated WCW U.S. champion Eddie Guerrero in an actual match that had no rules, no disqualification. He won the U.S. title in that match. The main event was just weird. It was this weird triangle match, which was what they called them in WCW, just triangle match, with teams, and it was a weird format. Okay, it had Team NWO, which was Hollywood Hogan. Let me see where they go. I had them down here. I thought I had them. Yeah, Hollywood Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, and the Outsiders, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. Team Piper, which was Roddy Piper and the Four Horsemen, basically. Roddy Piper, Steve Mongo McMichael, Chris Benoit, and where'd he go? Jeff Jarrett. Of course, this is when Jeff Jarrett was part of the NWO. No, not when he was part of the NWO. That was later. It was part of the Four Horsemen. Which a lot of people didn't like, but I actually liked that time period of the Four Horsemen. Even with Mongo McMichael, he wasn't the most talented, but he was entertaining as hell. And then there was Team WCW, which was Lex Luger, the Giant, and the Steiner Brothers. Well, it's supposed to be the Steiner Brothers. They injured Rick before the show started, or during the beginning of the show, something like that. So they ended up only having 3 people. But what it was is the winners of each, it would be like eliminations, but the team would win. If the NWO won, let's start the WCW. If the one wasn't winning by the stipulation. If WCW won, all NWO members would be suspended for 3 years, and all the titles that they had would be returned to WCW. So you know that Hall and Nash, after first getting there, just the year before, not even being there a year, and Hogan, they're not going to get suspended for 3 years. They're not all leaving the company or something. I mean, even then, if you didn't know the inner workings of wrestling, I had a little bit of it figured out. So you knew they weren't winning. The one that was plausible, Team Piper, if they won, Roddy Piper got a world title shot against Hogan anytime he wanted in a steel cage, because I think just a month prior, Piper beat Hogan in a steel cage, but of course it wasn't for the title. So this would be for the title if he won. And the obvious choice, if NWO wins, they get a shot at any title, any place, anytime. Who do you think won? That's right, the good old NWO. Because obviously WCW wasn't winning with that stipulation. Anyway, the match is freaking weird anyway. Like I said, 4 people except WCW, they ended up having 3. But the first 3 people from each team would start off in the ring, and it'd be like eliminations or something. And after a certain amount of time, the other person from the teams would come in. I don't remember if they did this like one at a time over a time period like they did with War Games, or if they all came in at once. But anyway, somehow at some point in the match, I don't even understand it. It goes from part of a battle royal, maybe once the other 3 members come in or something, then it goes into a pinfall thing. Anyway, Hogan ended up pinning Lex Luger when Dennis Rodman interfered and hit him with spray paint can. Sounds weird to say. I want to say spray paint can. And then they laid him out and spray painted NWO on his back. And then Sting came down from the rafters and like took out the NWO and was beating up Hogan with his bat when it went off the air. That was during the time period when you could do the stuff, when WCW did that a lot. They were getting it kind of from ECW, because ECW hardly ever just, match is over, good night. It was always chaos, But, they could get away with it during this time because the angle with the NWO and Sting was like so hot, But, like I said, just stupid main event. And this was like the month that Dennis Rodman debuted, I think. I don't know if he had his first match, but that was, I don't know if that was his first time with WCW, but it was the month he debuted. But next we're going to move to probably the biggest show of the month and of the year, was on March 23rd, so the next week. It was WWF WrestleMania 13. This is from Chicago. Just give a rundown of the card here. Billy Gunn defeated Flash Funk, and of course this is pre-DX Billy Gunn. The Headbangers won a Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match to become #1 contenders to the Tag Team titles. They defeated Doug Furnace and Phil LaFawn, if you remember them. I remember them more from ECW, but I know they were in WWF too. The Godwins and the New Blackjacks, which was Blackjack Wyndham and Blackjack Bradshaw, with JBL later on. WWF Intercontinental Champion Rocky Maivia, The Rock, obviously, retained his title. He pinned the Sultan, which was his cousin Rikishi, playing a guy from like the Middle East with the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund as his managers. Like, nothing worked there. That one might have been funnier than passing off Yokozuna as a Japanese sumo wrestler. Apparently, they just take Samoans and put them in any role they want. But, I mean, everybody knows about the Samoan dynasty in wrestling. Like, no matter what weird characters they're given, they're always going to come out, like, rising above that. And not just because of the family connection, but just because, they're, for the most part, they're all so good at what they do. Triple H defeated Goldust by pinfall. That was when he was still Hunter Hearst Helmsley. But it was, I think it was like just pre-DX, but I'm pretty sure China was with him at this. Yeah, China was with him at this point, but it was like pre-DX. That would be coming soon. The WWF Tag Team title match between Owen Hart and British Bulldog and Mankind and Vader ended in a double countout. And then we get probably one of the biggest matches in the history of not just WrestleMania but wrestling, and one that people look at as like, a lot of people say, oh, this started the Attitude Era, this started it. A lot of people look at this as one of those tipping off points of the Attitude Era started. That was when Bret Hart defeated Stone Cold Steve Austin in a submission match. It was that famous match. So many iconic moments from the match. Known as the double turn. I should do that. Double turn, where Stone Cold was the bad guy, Bret Hart was the good guy, and, kind of leading, a lot of people think that it just happened instantly in that match. But leading up to it, Stone Cold was getting a lot more popular with the fans, even though he was still being a heel. And Bret Hart was, doing his like whining character, which it turns out to be that's not really a character. Bret Hart was pretty much playing himself there. Sorry, but Bill Goldberg, he never shuts up about him or anything else. Oh, yeah, he whined about how he wasn't treated in WCW, and I mean a lot of that is on them, but a lot of it's on his attitude. And he whined recently because WWE didn't save him a seat or something. I don't know. He's always whining. Anyway, it was kind of turning that way, but this match, like the full turn happened. But there's so many iconic moments. Ken Shamrock was a special guest referee, perfect in his role. Love Ken Shamrock as a wrestler, by the way. Let's let's see, the iconic shot that they even put on a shirt with like Stone Cold was in the sharpshooter and the blood coming down like going between his teeth. I think the shirt even said blood from a stone. I remember the shirt. But it was the submission match where Bret Hart won, but not because Steve Austin submitted. He passed out because of the pain, and that made him like, a tough guy. He's still able to lose. Bret Hart still comes out, victorious, but, Stone Cold's like, I never submitted, made them both even bigger stars than they were. Despite what I just said about Bret Hart being whiny baby, he's still one of the best of all time. His whiny attitude can't take away that fact. But I'm getting tired of it. But, let's see. And that wasn't the end of the pay-per-view. A lot of, biggest match, you'd think it would be the end, but obviously it's not. After that, we have Ahmed Johnson and the Legion of Doom defeated the Nation of Domination, which consisted of Farouk, Crush, and Savio Vega. I forgot Crush and Savio Vega were even part of Nation of Domination at one point. This wasn't when they were like as big as they would get, with D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry and The Rock would join, the Nation of Domination versus DX. That was probably the height of them. But anyway, they defeated them in a Chicago street fight. It was like after that match, you could put this out there. You got Ahmed Johnson. Anything he's involved with is just dog crap. And the main event was Undertaker defeated Psycho Sid to become WWF champion, and of course to extend his winning streak at WrestleMania, which they weren't really referring to then because he didn't. I can't remember how many wins he'd had then, but it wasn't like a super. It definitely wasn't like 10. It might have been 6, 7. I don't know. I'd come up with the figure later, but not in time for this. But it was a good match, but anything after that Bret Hart Stone Cold match was, I think if they'd have flopped the order around, well, I don't know. I don't know if anything, was memorable about this show but that match, just because of how big that match was. You just have matches sometimes that are just transcend everything. But one other thing to note is, believe it or not, back in 1997, Ron Killings, now known as R-Truth, well, and Ron Killings, depending on what they're doing with his character, he debuted. And he's still, like, wrestling at a high level. He still looks like he did when he debuted. It's like, that guy has the fountain of youth, like, in every way. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he wrestled another 20 years and didn't lose a step. But, yeah, that's pretty much wrestling at the time. Like, and that really started the huge turnaround for WWF, leading into, of course, next year's WrestleMania is when Stone Cold would officially become the champion and the man there. And into their biggest period ever. Unless, today they're making more money, obviously, because they're charging more, but, are we about to see another huge boom like we had in the Attitude Era? I don't know. In some ways, people, if I said, like, there's a lot of today's wrestling that reminds me of then, not, people are going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? I don't mean, like, quality of this or that, or, just like in terms of, like, being a household name. I mean, much as I hate it because I'm going to end up freaking paying more, and you need a flow chart to keep track of what's on what streaming. They're about to have a wrestling used to be called pay-per-view. Now they're called PLEs, premium live events, on freaking ESPN. If you'd have said that back then, you would have thought you were nuts. Like, ESPN's not going to cover that. They stopped covering wrestling in the 80s with the AWA, and it was always just boring stuff. But anyway, remains to be seen how this time period will be looked at. Because it's always, you can look back at the golden era of the WWF from the 80s, or the Attitude Era. After that, it's like the quality went downhill. In some ways it did, but I don't think that really started into like the 2011 time period on till like 2022, 23, something like that, when Triple H took over. That was really a down period. Like, everybody thinks of the 90s as being like this huge time in wrestling, but if you remember back in 1995 and early part of 96, like, WWF was like in the dumpster as far as like quality and star power and stuff. But anyway, we'll move on from wrestling. We'll talk about some kids meal toys, because everybody remembers getting to go out and get a kids meal. Well, if you're lucky enough to get one. We weren't hardly ever, but We sure like the commercials. But the Happy Meal toys, McDonald's obviously Happy Meals, but everybody calls them Happy Meal toys, even if they're from Burger King. I guarantee somebody's went to Burger King and asked for a Happy Meal before. It had to have happened. But anyway, McDonald's had Hunchback of Notre Dame toys, featuring 8 toys, and like some of them were musical instruments, and they're from the Disney movie, which I've seen. It's been forever since I've seen the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Burger King had some Cartoon Network merchandise for their Burger King Kids Club meals. They tried to give it a name too, but I bet you nobody was going to McDonald's and asked for the McDonald's Kids Club. It was, it was the Happy Meal was the brand of McDonald's, but it sort of became like, with you say, give me a Kleenex normally instead of a tissue. Some people ask when they want a Mountain Dew, they ask for a Coke. It's that type of name branding stuff that McDonald's did so well. But anyway, Burger King's had Kings. There's multiple Kings there. Burger King had Cartoon Network Wacky Racing. They were a set of 5 different cars. There was a Fred and Dino and like the Flintstones mobile, where they pedal with their feet. There was like a gorilla and some other character in the car. I don't know what cartoon that was. There was a Jeff Gordon NASCAR, so there must have been some sponsorship with them. Burger King NASCAR, and then like a Scooby-Doo NASCAR. So those were cool. Wendy's had Felix the Cat toys, from the Felix the Cat cartoon. There was a ball. I think it was just, I don't know exactly what it was. It might have had the Felix character on it, like in a ball. But it later recalled. Stupid. It's always stupid when they have to recall stuff because, a kid put it in their mouth. Well, don't give it to your kids. Anyway, KFC was doing kids' meals at this time. They had Extreme Ghostbuster toys. A set of 6 toys. There was some puzzle cubes, the Ghostbusters ambulance car, and some other stuff in there. And then Taco Bell had Goosebumps activity books, which are really cool. They were things that looked like the Goosebump books, but they were like different toys. Like there was a 3D puzzle. It was based on the book Welcome to Dead House. An Ocean Escape board game based on Deep Trouble 2. An Abominable Snowman game based on the Abominable Snowman from Pasadena. And How to Draw a Monster based on How to Kill a Monster book. So some really cool stuff there in those kids' meals. And you can find a lot of these stuff on eBay, and it's not even that expensive. Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of that, they have that adult Happy Meal from the McDonald land, and I just wanted to try the shake. Just to try it. If the ice cream machine even works. But anyway, we figure, we'll get that, and the whatever toy comes with it, maybe it'll be a collectible, maybe it'll be something like retro or something. So we go to order it, and it was late. It was like 10:30 at night. All I wanted was a couple snack wraps. Just give me my order here. Didn't even get any fries. I just got a couple ranch snack wraps. Didn't even want any. I was having a lot of tooth pain that night, as I do every day. But I didn't want I really like the spicy one too, but I just took anyway. None of that matters. She went to order the kids meal because she didn't really want the shake because it was cotton candy. But I was like, I'll try it, and she was going to have the meal, which by the way, the meal is either I think it's a quarter pounder with cheese, with fries, and I don't know if you get a drink and a shake or just a shake. I think it's just a shake with the toy. Or you can, instead of the quarter pound of cheese, you can have a 10-piece McNuggets. Ton of food there, okay? Literally, this meal rang up $18.99. Oh, it was $17.99. Sorry, I added $1. Snuggles, quit. I'm not getting the meal. She's whining about it. Literally, $19 for this freaking meal. And the person's like, yeah, they're expensive. We haven't sold many of them. Supposedly the toy's going to be collectible in years. I was like, what is it? A freaking piece of gold? A little bit of food. A medium shake. It's probably cotton candies are probably going to be the best anyway. And with the shakes nowadays, they put 5,000 pounds of whipped cream in it to fill up half the cup anyway. I know your tricks, restaurants. Anyway, sorry about talking too much about today's, but it kind of relates to this. So we took that off there instantly. She just went and got a freaking quarter pounder meal. And our whole order was less than that one freaking, and she even got large, I think, was less than that one stupid meal. And I guess the cashier felt bad just because of the price of it. So she actually put, and I know it was an accident because these things are like gold apparently. She actually put the toy in there. So we got the toy for free. And we opened it up and, oh my God. There's like, Snuggles, quit. She'll just randomly do that. There's nothing wrong. She's bored. She wants me to get off the podcast. I'll be done soon, Snuggles. But there was a couple postcards, some stickers, a freaking Grimace, like, supposed to be his ID card, and like this metal tin. And there's a couple other little things that like were stupid. It's like, that was probably half the meal there. It was probably $10 worth of a toy that wasn't even worth a penny. That's supposed to be collectible in years? Well, fine. I'll save it and sell it to somebody, some idiot's willing to buy that. I don't see how, when this stuff from the 90s is like for sale at $5 in a bag, I don't know how this stupid McDonald Land toy is going to sell for anything. I probably can't even get a penny from it 100 years from now. Anyway, we're going to move. We're just talking about the Goosebump toys. We're going to talk about a few Goosebump books that came out during this time. Goosebumps was on book number 53 of their regular series. It's called Chicken Chicken. I've never heard of it. I think during the end they were kind of getting running out of ideas. Chicken Chicken. I don't know if it was about a mutant chicken or what, but give yourselves Goosebumps, which I'm reading right now. I'm starting, to read that series, which is just like the Choose Your Own Adventure books. Really cool. They were on book number 15 called Please Don't Feed the Vampire. And Goosebumps Presents, which was a series where they re-released some of their older books that had been made into TV episodes, because by then the TV show had been on a couple years. They were re-releasing them and adding pictures from the series to get people to buy them. It was basically the same book, but they added the pictures. They were on book number 10 from Bad Hair Day. And I don't remember ever reading that book or seeing that episode. There's a few of them I didn't see. But that's the book, Goosebump books that came out then. I want to talk a little bit. I know I talked about it before about, I've probably told some of these stories before, but home life wasn't the best during this time period. You'd think that, me going back and covering the 90s would be like, some of the stuff that happened to me then, I would want to stay away from it. But I always tend to, find the humor in the stuff, To me, the painful stuff is over, I'm not having to live the life that I was living at the time, and if you don't know what I'm referring to, my stepdad used to hit me a lot, and, stop, Snuggles. I guarantee if we had a dog like her, he would have kicked her. And I'm not even being facetious on that. It's annoying, but I definitely wouldn't hit her. Anyway, she's trying to make herself the star of this, I think. No, but, it wasn't the best life. We didn't ever get to go anywhere. The only time we were allowed outside is when he wasn't home and he didn't know we were out there. It was, especially during this time, it was getting really miserable. But there were some fun things that happened. Sorry, I'm waiting on delivery, so I'm making sure that they're not on the way. But there was some things that happened during that time that we always found a way to entertain ourselves. But this was, believe it or not, this was a time period he would actually take us to the bar, and it would be normal. Like, there would sometimes be other kids there at the bar playing. Nowadays, you did that, CPS is going to swoop in. But during those days, when CPS got called 2 or 3 times, we were told to lie. He was standing there as they questioned us. And, of course, what were we going to do? Oh, yeah, he hits us when he's right there, knowing that they ain't going to do nothing about it anyway. But I went through a whole spiel about them before. I'm not going to get into that anymore here. But there was a time period we actually got to go to the bar because that's all he would do is drink. And that was actually, good times, believe it or not. We would get quarters, and we would play all kinds of different arcade games and the pinball machine, the Crypt Keeper pinball. And just watch the freaking drunk people. We'd give them nicknames. There was one guy we called Macho Man because he looked like Macho Man. We would just laugh at the old people falling over. Like, real, if that's your best part of childhood is laughing at old drunks in the bar, then. But I told you before. Remember the Hot 100, and I think I've told this before. I'm gonna tell it again. Hot 100 is only known to me and my brothers as one thing: a porn tape. Okay, Marky Phil had this porn collection that he didn't put up. That all the kids knew where it was, which is really smart. But what did he care? Anyway, it became a running joke, literally running. Josh or Travis would inevitably during the day at some point get this tape, and it was a game. I was in on it, but I would pretend because I was older to be like shocked. But they would get this tape and they would put it on the VCR and turn the TV up as loud as it goes. But you know, some of those old TVs, they got loud. And I would be somewhere in the house, probably doing dishes because that's all we were forced to do, or listening to music. And I would hear people going at it on this tape. And I was supposed to be the babysitter because, you know, forced into it. But I mean, not that that's anything different. A lot of people from the 90s, you know, I was 13 at the time, watched their younger brother and sisters, you know, even when their parents are gone all day. You know, that was nothing different then. Nowadays, it's a national headline. Oh my God, a 13-year-old was watching what was Josh then? Like 9? Like a 9 and 6-year-old by himself calling the National Guard. We need resources. but anyway, they would put this tape on. I would hear the people going at it on the tape. And I would go running. And half of it was like, I better get this off there because the neighbors are going to hear I'm going to get in trouble because of course they're going to think, who's watching the porn tape? Is it going to be the 9-year-old or going to be the 13-year-old? But I would go through the house, turn that off, and try to make my voice louder than them, which was probably just making it worse. But at the same time, I was like in on the game like it was funny. Like, but I can't explain it. You know how you're outraged at something, but at the same time you're like secretly enjoying it. Like, not that way. Just the fun of it. Like, you know, just something to break up our monotonous day of cleaning and being abused. But yeah, and I would take it and then go put it somewhere where I didn't think they'd find it, but of course they found it. I think I really was trying to hide it, but they found it. And this happened 2 or 3 more times. I think one time, like they did it like right when he got home, and I barely got it out of there and put up. If I'd have got caught with that tape in my hand, who knows what would have happened to me. I mean, I had it all done anywhere. I had a plate broken over my head. I won't get into trying to make it depressing. Like I said, I choose to look back at all this stuff and laugh. You know, I don't know if it's the abused kid syndrome thing or just my natural sense of humor, but like I said, I was outraged half the time at that, but it was, you know, like I said, it was all fun. It was all just ways we found to entertain ourselves, like playing, you know, kickball out with our friends that we barely got to go out and see. Although sometimes we would be able to go over there because he was actually friends with the neighbor. His name was Brigham, and he called him Brig or Big Man. But that's another. I'll save some of those stories for another time. Just playing with the neighbors and all the ways we entertained ourselves outside. We had ways of entertaining ourselves inside too, even if it's something stupid like that. But we're gonna end this week. We're gonna go into a Nickelodeon lineup and then talk about the TGIF lineup of the time. But I pick a random date. We're going to March 6th of 1997, and this happens to be a Thursday on Nickelodeon. So this is during the school year. Depending on where you're at, this might have been spring break time. But this might have, I don't know, March 6th probably is too early for spring break probably. But we're going to go through the Nickelodeon lineup. Of course, we start at midnight, starting at Nick at Night. And we've got, you know, the normal Nick at Night stuff at the time. Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, Dick Van Dyke Show, Bob Newhart Show. Always get a kick out of this. A half hour of paid programming at 2 before they're back into the shows at 2:30 with the Munsters. I forgot this was on Nick at Night. That wasn't on the Nick at Night during the 90s a whole lot. This is the episode called Grandpa's Call of the Wild. I remember that one. And then we've got Mary Tyler Moore Show, Rhoda, Taxi, Dick Van Dyke Show, Bob Newhart Show, and at 5:30, every kid's favorite, Nick News. We just love Nick News so much. You can tell. But no, seriously, whether it had Nickelodeon in the title or not, if it said news, a lot of kids weren't watching. I mean, some did. The smart ones probably did. The ones that made something themselves did. Not me. Then at 6, we've got The Adventures of Tintin. Not Rin Tin Tin, but Tintin. He was like a newspaper reporter that was always in the middle of solving crimes. It was I can't remember. It was either French or Russian. I think French, cartoon that they made in American. They dubbed it in English and stuff. But I remember watching that a lot. Beetlejuice at 6:30. Love that cartoon. Didn't like the movie, but I love the cartoon. At 7 o'clock, we got Wienerville. My brother Josh's favorite, and I'm just saying it was his favorite, Wienerville, hosted by Mark Wiener. Of course, we would laugh forever at that as kids. It's Mark Wiener, especially with our stepdad. We called Marky Foe because his name was Mark. Look, it's Mark Wiener. And Josh was like, I don't want to see Mark Wiener. Well, don't put that Hot 100 tape on. Anyway, 7:30, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the classic 80s series. Love that cartoon, I should say. Love that one. Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon. Then we got one of the first 3 Nicktoons ever, Rugrats. And then 9:30, because we're in Nick Jr. now, Nick Jr. time, which was, of course, made mostly for preschoolers while, kindergarten through the rest of us went to school. And mostly it would be preschoolers at home watching this. The Busy World of Richard Scarry. I love that cartoon with all the animals running around and the whole town is just animals. Rupert. Then we got Muppet Babies at 10:30. Thought I was going to sing the song there, but I'm not. People are probably getting tired of me doing a stupid impersonation of the Muppet Babies song. 11 o'clock we got Allegra's Window. This was when I think during the time period when it was just starting. That was a good show. And another one that at 11:30, Gullah Gullah Island. They came out at the same time period, but I really loved Gullah Gullah Island. It was really cool to see the different cultures and everything. It was sort of in the style of a Sharon Lois and Bram's The Elephant Show, where it would be like adults and kids and singing songs and learning about things. Sort of like that, but for a newer generation and teaching a different culture instead of, the other one was just, music. This is actually teaching a different culture. At noon, we got Little Bear. I love that cartoon. I don't care if it was made for little kids that were, I was 13 at the time. I still love Little Bear. I watched Barney from time to time. Leave me alone. Blue's Clues. Love that one. Then we got The Busy World of Richard Scarry again. Papa Beaver's Story Time, which I never really watched. Then we got Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon again. Beetlejuice. Tiny Toon Adventures. Love that cartoon was crazy. Of course, Animaniacs spun off of that. And Pinky and the Brain was spun off of that. And then we got Muppet Babies again. Alvin and the Chipmunks again. And then we got Inspector Gadget. I love Inspector Gadget. Didn't care for the movies, really, the live-action movies, but the cartoon I loved. Of course, that's back from the 80s. And then we've got a rerun of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Hungry Hounds. I don't remember that off the top of my head. You need to be good, okay? I'm going to get up and get you food, okay? But be good. You are pretty good. Then we've got Rocco's Modern Life, another great Nicktoon. Clarissa Explains It All. Love that show. It was, I think, set like I said earlier about Boy Meets World being a grade above us. I think Clarissa Explains It All was a few grades above us, but everybody had a crush on Clarissa. We got Tiny Toon Adventures again. One of the 3 original Nicktoons. I always say that it's Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Stimpy, by the way. But Doug, and then we've got Rugrats again. And during this time, kids were like, okay, kids are staying up later. We'll do Nickelodeon until 8:30 this time. We'll give you an extra half hour. But The Secret World of Alex Mack. I've only seen a few episodes of that. And then we get into Nick at Night again with Happy Days, I Love Lucy, The the Munsters again with All Star Munster. I just recently seen that. I've got the whole Munsters DVD collection. We got the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Rhoda, Taxi, and we finish up with The Odd Couple. So that is our Nickelodeon lineup. And one other thing to talk about is the TGIF lineup. Of course, the first TGIF was on ABC Friday nights from 8 to 10. The first show you see on there is normally their main show, to draw the people in to try to hopefully watch out the rest of them. Step by Step, they were in their 6th season, and it started this month, and it was actually their last season on ABC. I think they moved to CBS with Family Matters the next season, and it would be their last season then. But the second one was Boy Meets World. They were in season 4, like I said before, and they only had one episode this month. It was the one where Corey, Sean, and Topanga went on this quiz show, and it was like for, again, I hate to use the word dorks like I did with Billy with Power Rangers, but that the stereotypical, the smart kids. It was like a Jeopardy, but they made it out to be even more boring, and it seemed like Ben Stein would host and be like, wow. I don't think he was actually the host, but it wouldn't surprise me if I went back and watched it and he was. But I don't think he was the host. But anyway, Corey, Sean, and Topanga were on there, and they were they weren't the popular kids, but they were more popular than these kids. And they got ratings for it, so they started changing this show, and they made it more like an MTV show. They would be hanging out in bikinis and by the pool, and just basically turning into some MTV type of show instead of this quiz show that only the science nerds and stuff watched. But that was that episode. And Sabrina the Teenage Witch was in its first season. They were next. And then the next one was kind of like a rerun. They didn't have a set show. So, sometimes it would be a step-by-step, Boy Meets World, Sabrina, maybe something else. But yeah, that was TGIF. I really didn't start getting into watching TGIF regularly until next year. I'd watch it every once in a while, but with only TV having cable at that time, being downstairs, or not cable, just an antenna, we would watch that. If we were doing anything else, especially that time of day, we were supposed to be going to bed, so we weren't even watching TV. We had to sneak up to watch TV at night. But anyway, we're going to move on to talking about next week's episode. We're going to be in episode 44. We're going to be going back to March of 1994. So we're doing March of 97 this week, March 94 next week. We'll see how things were 3 years prior. This is our 6th episode into 94. At the time, I was 10 years old and in 4th grade. And that's about all I got for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope it wasn't too rambly for you. I know I get off on tangents, but if I just stick to just this, it gets, repetitive sometimes. But thank you guys for joining me, and we'll see you on the next one.
And now, I predict the future. Next week, you'll be in the same time, same place, same station, for another hideous, hateful haul of horror.